This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hey there, and happy Thursday. Welcome to episode 54 of She Creates Business, the podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts, and I'm so excited to have you guys with me today. Today on the podcast, I've been talking about this quite a bit on Instagram and social media. I have Christy Wright, who is the head of Business Boutique, which is a function of the Dave Ramsey organization. She runs the podcast by the same name, Business Boutique, and she also is the author of the brand new book just out on April 17th, Business Boutique, which is a workbook for women entrepreneurs. I got my hands on an early copy of it, and it is absolutely phenomenal, and it's truly such an honor to interview Christy on today's show. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Both entertaining and inspiring, Christy Wright presents messages that educate and give hope to audiences nationwide. As the creator of Business Boutique and through her podcast and sellout live events, Christy has equipped thousands of women to successfully run and grow a business so they can make money doing what they love. Christy is a certified business coach and Ramsey Personality. Since joining Ramsey Solutions in 2009, she has spoken to audiences across the country at women's conferences, national business conferences, and Fortune 500 companies. Her new book, Business Boutique, was released on the 17th, as I just mentioned, of this month, and you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Christy B. Wright. You can find her website at christywright.com or check her out on Facebook at facebook.com/official Christy Wright. And her last name, you guys, is spelled Wright. I really enjoyed this conversation. Christy is just a powerhouse. She's an excellent communicator. She's a phenomenal educator. And there's two quotes that I don't want you to miss from this interview that she said. The first is, "You're not doing anyone any favors by dismissing or downplaying your strengths." Completely love that. And the second thing that she said is that leaning into your strengths doesn't mean you're arrogant. It means you're aware. And I could not agree more. Those two quotes were some of the favorites that I wrote down, although there were many. And I just want to warn you that in this episode, I say I love that a lot after she talks, because I did, and I did not know what to say because I was a little bit starstruck for some reason. It was just such a pleasure to speak with Christy. So without further ado, let's go to the show. Christy Wright, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to do this first 5 in 5 segment because, as the listeners already know, I'm switching up the format of the podcast, but you're actually the first guest that I'm doing this segment with. So this is actually like double exciting for me.
Oh, yay.
Yay, it'll be super fun. So I thought it was a super quick 5 questions to kind of help us get to know you a little bit. So tell me, Christy, coffee or tea? What do you reach for first?
Oh, coffee, maybe like 6 cups.
Six for Christy. Love it. And what do you take in your coffee? Cream, sugar? Tell me about it.
Yes, a little bit of cream, a couple of stevia, just a little bit of sugar, something to sweeten it up a little bit.
Love. Okay, Netflix or Amazon Prime?
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. And what have you been reading or listening to?
I'm big into reading, and right now I'm reading some books on how to raise boys because I didn't have any brothers, and I've got 2 boys, so I've got my hands full.
You do? So do I. What are their ages?
2 years, just over 2 years and 7 months.
You do have your hands full. They're close.
I do.
They're so close. Yeah, mine are 4
are.
and 18 months, so a little further, but yeah, they're rascals, but they get along so well. More time because you cut out right as you said it.
Homeland. We love Homeland.
Oh, is that with Claire Danes?
Yes.
Okay. I have not seen Homeland, but I'm going to have to put that on my list because someone else actually mentioned that to me. So it's funny you say that. So, okay, Homeland. Okay, last question. Paper or digital planner?
I love both, but just from a practical standpoint, I've got to go with digital. I just keep everything on my phone.
Are you like a Google Calendar person?
Well, I just use whatever, I guess, the main calendar that's on your iPhone. So I guess iCal or whatever, it just kind of incorporates it. But we do have an app called FamCal, and that is what we share with having a shared calendar, too, that's separate from work.
Okay, cool. Love that. Well, let's dive in. I'm so excited today to talk about your new book, which just released yesterday. It's called Business Boutique, and we are going to get into all of that and more. But I really am excited to first kind of dive in about your mom. I'm an avid listener of your own podcast. You've also written in it about your book. Your mom, she's been an entrepreneur for many years. She's actually, she bakes wedding cakes. And so on this podcast, we totally get that and absolutely love it. And I'd love to know, how did having a strong female role model like that early on in your life really shape your character?
It's really interesting because I think as a child, your whole world is shaped by your parents. So they kind of create a reality and what's normal and what's not normal. And so for me, working hard and being in the business was just normal. Like, I didn't think that was weird at all as a child. That was what I knew as my reality every single day. And so for me to grow up and to pursue my dreams and passions and understand my strengths and kind of just chase what I want to do and not think twice about it was a result of having her example in my life. It wasn't like I ever felt like I had to ask permission to have a seat at the table or, I don't know, what if I can't do it? I'm like, no, I can do it. Like, my mom did it. Like, if you want something, you just go after it. And that's the kind of person she was. And that's definitely impacted my ability to be that type of person today. I
love that. And tell me, did your mom, what did she kind of encourage you to do? Because I know she was a single mom, right? And still is.
Right.
Okay. When you were younger, what did she encourage you towards, or did she kind of just let you find your own path? Was she like, yeah, entrepreneurship, or what was that like when you were little?
Oh yeah. She never, it's interesting, and I use this example a lot, but she never like actively taught me very much. It wasn't like she said, okay, Christy, you need to do these things.
Yeah.
She just lived certain qualities out. And so, for example, when we would go through really tough times, like I remember we would get a flat tire, for example, in the rain, or we went down to the cake shop at 3 a.m. one time for her to bake and it had been broken into, or, we got locked out of the house one time. Like we had struggles like anyone does, but we were just alone. We didn't have anyone else kind of to turn to, and just watching her overcome in those scenarios and watching her attitude, she'd be like, that's okay, we're just going to change a tire, I'm going to show you how to do it, here's how you do it, and you get this and you get the jack and here's the spare and she just found a way. And so I think having that model of just this persevering, persistent quality is what has developed that in me. So she didn't say, Christy, you should persevere. I just watched her persevere. And so that's what made me a person that perseveres. And so it's just incredible how those qualities have really affected who I am and shaped my character.
Do you find that as you're leading your own team now that those are things that you do for your own team?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's interesting because I model it for sure, but I think I more actively teach than she does because I'm just a natural teacher. So that's one of my strengths. And whether it's on my podcast or in my book or at live events, I love to teach others. And so I like to take concepts that may be overwhelming and break them down, and here's how you do this, and here's why this works, and here's how you can apply this to your life or your business. And I try to wrap that in a lot of encouragement so that people have not only the answers that they need, but the confidence that they need to go out and do those things. So I definitely am, my mom's an optimist and I got that from her, but I think I'm much more of an active teacher than she is, just by my kind of my strengths.
Well, and speaking of a teacher, you're a personality and speaker for the Dave Ramsey organization. And so I wonder, how did you come on to that organization? And I know they didn't just say, yep, you're a speaker, so come on. How did you come into that organization and then kind of like navigate your journey to where you are now?
Well, it's interesting. I was just telling the story earlier today. I was at a book signing in Atlanta and someone asked me a similar question. And it's a fun story because I was actually hired to develop products for youth and teens. So I worked on our kids' books and a lot of children's products and that kind of thing. And so as I did that, there was one particular summer, and this was the summer of 2010, where Dave's daughter Rachel was graduating from college and she was coming to work on our team. Now, this was back before Ramsey Personalities or speakers or anything like that. But she was booked to speak at a conference that summer, and it was 20 different dates across the country. And I was kind of the representative to manage this relationship between our company and the conference. Well, about 2 weeks before she was supposed to go on the road, Dave pulled her from half of the events because it was just way too crazy of a schedule. No one should have to do that schedule. And so he pulled her from half of them, and I had to be the bearer of bad news and go back to the conference and say, hey, I'm so sorry, she's not going to be able to do this. And they said to me, Christy, we've got her booked for 20 dates. What are we going to do for these other 10 keynote presentations? And I said, well, I'll do them. And they said, can you speak? I said, I think so.
Sure.
I just kind of made it up. And what it really came down to was, this was before we had a speakers group or personalities. It wasn't that I sought out a speaking career. What I sought to do was solve a problem, because I was faced with the problem of, I was the representative for our company to this conference. They had a problem that they had 10 dates that they needed filled, and I just filled the gap. And Sheryl Sandberg talks about this in Lean In, where she said, some of the best career opportunities are not jobs that are posted, but problems that you solve. And then as you solve that problem, that thing becomes your job. And that's very true for me in my career journey, where that has evolved into being a full-time speaker for the company, and then now evolved into being a Ramsey personality and an author and all of these different things. But it all really started with, they had a problem, and I raised my hand and said, I can fix that. I'll step in there and fix that. And it wasn't with an agenda to have my own book or anything like that. I just wanted to solve the problem that was in front of me for our company.
And so after you did those 10 events, what happened with your kind of trajectory? Obviously, you're a speaker now, but I mean, was there someone who sat down and said, Christy did amazing at these 10 events, and so now your trajectory is this in the organization? Or what did that look like from that standpoint after you did those speaking events?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's really great about our company, about Dave Ramsey, about our leadership team, is that they are very aware of people's natural strengths. And so we take the DISC assessment as a part of becoming a team member. It's posted outside of every team member's desk, so you know what their strengths are, what their natural tendencies are, and that type of thing. So it's a part of our culture anyway. But what happened that summer was, as Rachel and I traveled around the country and spoke, not only did Rachel get great reviews, which was not a surprise to anyone, she'd been speaking since she was like 15, but me, who had been there for 6 months, and was a product developer, I got great reviews too. And they're like, wow, Christy Wright's a great speaker. And they thought, oh, well, that's interesting. No one knew this a few months ago. And so that fall, what happened was, our company saw a real need to have more speakers, because they were turning down around 3,000 requests a year for Dave Ramsey that he just couldn't do at this stage of the game. And so they thought, you know what, we need more speakers to go carry this message and spread hope and impact lives. And so they developed a speakers group. And I'm not sure exactly how all the other speakers were chosen at that time, but I was chosen certainly based on that summer and my performance after solving that problem. And so I was kind of slated to do speaking for the speakers group, but that was still on the side in addition to my full-time job of developing products. And then over time, the demand rose for more speakers. The demand rose for me as a speaker, and we started to see God really bring to light my passion for helping people in the areas of life balance and leadership and women in business. And so that has now evolved, as our company is looking to the future, into the Ramsey personalities that are going to scale. And it's kind of our succession plan. And so that is what has turned into what used to be the speakers group is now the Ramsey personalities.
And your role in kind of the business boutique and that whole brand that you've really created, you are a huge encourager and coach for women-owned businesses and entrepreneurship, and yet you're employed by someone else. But I love this because I think you are so impactful. And so I wonder, could you tell us how your current position within the organization helps you be more impactful in the areas that you're really passionate about?
That's a great question. And it's something that I think has always been going on, but no one's ever asked me directly. So I'm so glad you did, because what it really comes down to for me is the way that we are impacting lives through the business boutique is it's all about the impact. So for example, if you look at musicians or bands, they might sign with a record label, and that record label puts all of their manpower and resources and money and effort to put that musician out there. And because they do so, because they get a record deal, they are able to make a much larger impact. And if you look at it from this standpoint of me being a speaker, what an awesome opportunity it is that Dave Ramsey is sharing his platform with me. A platform, by the way, that took over 20 years to build. He has 12 million radio listeners, all of this giant machine of our company. And now he's saying, okay, Christy, this is going to be a platform that I'm going to share with you to build this little business. Now, Dave is an entrepreneur. He's a small business guy, and he actually structures our company that way. So for example, what is called Ramsey Solutions is made up of 14 different profit and loss centers. We have vice presidents of different P&Ls, and they are charged with running that like an entrepreneur. They're paid on the bottom line, and Dave has an entrepreneurial spirit. He says all the time he'd put every person in the building on commission if he could. So he's a guy that loves small business. So it's a really interesting blend that I work in, where yes, I work for Dave Ramsey. It's his company and he owns it all. But at the same time, I have incredible ownership and authority and freedom to build this thing based on what I see in the marketplace and what I believe the market needs. So I get to speak into it along with our entire team that works on it. So it's a really positive environment for me to get to test and experiment and do something like this, but certainly make a much larger impact than I ever could by myself.
And I think that that's such a fascinating model. And I feel that it would be wonderful if all of the, more startups today would kind of replicate that in a way, because I think that and you can speak to this more. Because you have that freedom, are you more creative in your thoughts and your solutions and your problem solving, do you feel?
I'll tell you what, I am very creative, but I'll tell you what it comes down to is we have a very positive culture, but I also have an unbelievable relationship with my leaders, the leadership team, and with Dave. And so I think when people feel that there's a foundation of trust, then they have the freedom to be creative. But if they feel like that their ideas are going to be shot down or people are going to call them out and make them feel stupid, then that doesn't encourage anyone to be creative or come up with new ideas. But because everyone in our company has a voice and ideas are appreciated and celebrated, even if they don't go forward, our company is one that the leaders appreciate feedback and appreciate that honesty and new ideas and innovation. I think that foundation of trust is what allows me to come forward with those ideas and speak up for different areas of the business boutique.
Excellent. Foundation of trust. I love that. So let's dig into Business Boutique, your new book that just came out yesterday as of recording this, which is April 18th today, you guys. It's not a book you read cover to cover. It's a workbook, and it's more like a living body of work for us as the reader. And I love that model. Tell me why you intentionally wrote the book that way.
Well, for me, things stick with me if I can interact with them. Now, I can read a book and I'll highlight it and that helps a little bit. But once I close the book, sometimes it's really difficult to recall the information. And there's a lot of information in Business Boutique. It's a lot of pages, it's a lot of stories. And the truth is that we need a lot of help when it comes to business. And so we even had trouble on the book side of things when we were creating this book together of editing it. It was like, what can we cut? We need to get the page count down. But we just knew it was really important stuff for the reader. So for me, in order to make that information stick and really, be able to be applied to each individual reader and their unique business, I put those the action items at the end of every chapter, because I thought, okay, if you can apply what you've learned, if you can write it down and begin to apply it to your business and interact with this information, maybe it will stick better. But here's the other thing. This is a book that you can easily revisit in a year or 2 years or 3 years, and you may answer those questions totally differently because your goals have changed, your vision has changed, your setup and fulfillment have changed because your business is growing. And so it's something that's ever evolving where it can be that guide every step of the way with you. And that's my hope for it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. One part of the book, and you actually mentioned in where you work, you take the DISC personality system. And one part of the book, we've heard of, if you haven't heard of DISC, it's another system, sort of like Myers-Briggs. And we've probably all heard of that. But in the book, you have developed your own sort of personality test. And it's the 5E questions. And it's enjoy, excel, encourage, effortlessly, and energy. And this will make more sense, you guys, once you read the book. But I wonder, how did you kind of develop this system? And what have you found it really reveals about people and their businesses?
It's interesting. I just have a lot of ideas. And so it came to me one day where I was trying to think of, okay, people ask me all the time, how do I know what my strengths are? How do I know what my strengths are? And so a lot of the content that I create, a lot of the tips that I share or solutions that I give on my blog or podcast come because it's a problem people have. It's something that people ask me again and again and again. And so that's where I know, okay, I need to develop something on this. And sometimes I already have those thoughts. I just need to get them on paper. And sometimes I'm thinking up my answer right then. Like, well, how do I feel about this? Well, how do I, help this person? And so when I started getting that question again and again, I didn't want to always recommend go take a personality test. Some people don't have the time. They don't want to pay the money, whatever the reason is, they just don't want to take one. So I thought, what's a quicker way for you to get insight into your strengths? And I thought, well, it's these things. So I think I wrote out all of the different areas that kind of make up your strengths. And most of them were E questions, except maybe one or two. And I was like, well, can I reframe this question to be an E question? And I don't even remember what the original ones were. But as I was able to use a synonym for that particular word that was an E word, I was like, well, that's kind of sticky. That'll be memorable. if I can give them 5 E questions. So it really was just, ideas that come in my head. And I think that's such a gift that God has given me, where just being a thought leader in this space where God is constantly creating content. He's constantly giving me thoughts and ideas. So people ask me all the time, where do your ideas come from? I'm like, Jesus, God, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Things pop in my head all the time.
Yes. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Yes. And so when you mentioned in the book that you've kind of used this system with coaching clients. And so how do you find that what does it bring out in them, I guess, when they can answer these 5 E questions?
Well, it's interesting because when you start talking about your strengths, especially the 5 E questions, it forces you to be honest with yourself. And for many women that want to be humble, or they just they kind of want to downplay everything, it's hard for them to say, what do you excel at? They start to get a little squirmy, like, oh, nothing. I'm just not good at anything. And you're like, yes, you are. You're not doing anyone any favors by dismissing or downplaying your strengths. In fact, if God made you good at something, own it and lean into it, because those are the things you were created to do. And those are the things where you can really help people and bless people. But what's so great about the 5 E questions is that it kind of forces you to have an honest look at yourself. And when you're aware of your strengths, then you can leverage them in your business, but also in your life. People think that, oh, I don't want to be cocky. Well, I'm not talking about that. When you are leaning into your strengths, it doesn't mean that you're arrogant. It just means that you're aware. And that's a really good thing.
Oh, I love that. It doesn't mean you're arrogant. It just means you're aware. That's great. I just want to make that note.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yes. Well, and similarly, kind of similarly to the 5 E questions, and speaking of like forcing you to be honest, there is a goal breakdown chart. And on your website, you also have a profit calculator, which is your opt-in. If you guys have not seen that yet, go to ChristyWright.com and check out that profit calculator. I love these breakdowns because it shows you these micro goals. And as I read through your book, it's very clear that you're into these micro goals that give us are what actually changes or not changes, but allows us to achieve. So tell me, what is it about micro goals that is important for women entrepreneurs, and how does it help us get to that big picture that we have in our mind?
That's a great question, Kinsey. It's so interesting because most authors write from their personal experience and what they struggle with. And I will say that is true for me as well. So the fact that there is a lot of writing on follow through and how to execute on your ideas is because I struggle with follow through. I was writing the book. I had a 100,000 word count goal that I had to reach, and I had my time frame of several months. So 1 or 2 weeks of getting off track, I realized, okay, I've got to get back on track if I'm going to hit this deadline. So it really quickly gives you an assessment of where you are and accountability to get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. And so just personally, how did you break down your 100,000 word goal? Was that thousands of words daily or weekly?
Yeah, I think whenever I first set it, I think I had several months. So I was starting it in April of last year, and my deadline was mid-July. So whatever that time frame was, I broke it down into weekly word count goals and then daily word count goals. And what I realized was it took me about, I think if I remember correctly, I would write about 400 to 500 words an hour. So once I knew my work speed, then that would allow me to calculate how often or how much I needed to write per week, how many hours I needed to dedicate. But again, keep in mind, this was just for the first draft. That didn't include editing or reorganizing or outlining a chapter or looking up scriptures or quotes and references, citations, that type of thing. So really just understanding everything that went into it helped me be realistic about what time I needed to commit. And then that helped me block it on my schedule and make it a priority, because I can't tell you how many women I work with that say, I want to do XYZ, but they don't break it down into a goal and they don't ever put it on the calendar, so it never actually happens. But if you want to make those things actually occur in your life, you've got to dedicate time to them.
Yes. And I think that's interesting what you just said about your work speed. That's great, because sometimes we're just like, okay, I have 1 hour, so I guess I'll just go and do this thing. But if you don't know actually how fast you can, whether it's write or write your blog post, create content, things of that nature, then it's all kind of for nothing still.
It is,
because you waste the hour.
And I don't know about you, but I'm always Right. And I don't know about you, but I'm always unrealistic about how long something's going to take me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, oh, sure, I can clean my whole house in 20 minutes. I can get my 2 babies out the door for church in about 5 minutes. No, 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 no. You've got to be realistic about how much time something's going to take, or you set yourself up to fail.
Yes. Be realistic. Love that. Let's switch gears just a little bit here. I would love for you to tell us more about your own podcast. We're all avid podcast listeners here. And Business Boutique, same name as the book, is the show that you host. And tell us, how did you decide, or how did you and your team decide that was a great fit for what you were doing and the message that you're spreading, and what it was really like to get that launched in an organization of your size?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a combination of 2 very important factors. So this was spring of last year, and we were having a lot of requests from our audience and our attendees at Business Boutique events to launch a podcast. So many of them said, please have a podcast, because all we had at that point were events a couple times a year, and everyone can't or doesn't want to travel to an event across the country. And so they said, please, I need a book, I need a podcast, I need something. And we knew we were working on a book, but we knew that was a ways off before it would actually be published. And so we thought, okay, a podcast is something we could pull off pretty easy within this organization. Again, that goes back to Dave Ramsey's platform. We have the team, we have the equipment, we have the means to develop it. It just was a matter of sitting down and crafting the content and getting me behind a microphone, capturing the interviews and that type of thing. So that was one side. The one side was people were asking for it, and we knew we were able to do it. Now, the second reason that was very important was because I was about to go on maternity leave. And so I was basically going to go dark for 4 months. And with the nature of the business that I'm in, I can't just disappear for 4 months. And we wanted to continue to help people while I was gone. But as you can imagine, I wasn't real interested in getting on camera and shooting videos when I was very, very pregnant. So I was like, put me behind a microphone where no one can see me in my 3rd trimester self, and we'll just record some podcasts and help people. So it was a beautiful combination of the audience wanted it, but it certainly worked for me where I was at that time. And now that we've seen that it's so successful, we've got 500,000 downloads and people absolutely love it. Of course, we're going to stick with it. This is something that's really working, but it started with the market telling us that they wanted it, and we really listened and paid attention.
Oh, that's so important. It started with the market telling us what they wanted. I think that's so applicable in any business. Instead of saying, I'm going to do this thing because I love making the thing. Does the market want it? Is there demand?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you for that nugget. So we are at the beginning, as we record this, you guys, it's April 18th, 2017. We're really at the beginning of Q2 of this year. So we have so much time to accomplish the goals we've set out for ourselves and these projects that we've wanted to accomplish this year. So as we kind of wrap up the interview today, Christy, I would love for you to give us kind of what are your 2 biggest pieces of advice for us listening today about, when it comes to our businesses and the goals that we have for said businesses this year.
I teach people on goal setting a lot, and there's certainly a chapter on that in the book where you talk about your goals need to be specific and measurable and have a time limit and all of that stuff. And that's all good and true if you want to reach your goals. But here's what I found. You asked for 2 pieces of advice. And the 2 things I would say that you need if you want to reach your goal is you need to want it bad enough, and you need to be willing to work hard enough. If either one of those things are missing, even if everything else in your life is right, it's not going to happen, because reaching goals is really difficult. Change is hard, and you're going to encounter obstacles. But if you want it bad enough, then you're going to make it happen. And if you're willing to do the work, then you're going to make it happen. But so often, we might be willing to do some work, but we don't really care. We're not passionate about it. Maybe it's some goal that our husband or best friend said, yeah, you should do that. And your heart's not in it. So you need both of those pieces. You need to want it bad enough, and you need to be willing to work hard enough. If you have that, you'll reach your goal.
Yeah, so good. Tell me what's on the horizon for you this year. Obviously, you're on a book tour right now, which is wonderful. You are going to stop in my home state of Colorado, which is really neat.
Awesome.
But yeah, what else is on the horizon for you? What are you excited about?
Well, one of the vision, I guess one element of the vision for Ramsey Solutions for the future is that the Ramsey personalities would not only carry on the Dave Ramsey brand and spread this message to our existing audience and grow it, but that we would go into new markets, that we would go into white space and introduce people into our brands and our messages and the message of hope that have never heard of Dave Ramsey. And so really looking at 2017, what I'm so excited about with the Business Boutique is I think we have such an opportunity to do that. We have an opportunity to go into white space, to meet people that have never heard of Dave Ramsey, that can spread hope to people that don't know God and don't have hope for their businesses, and really speak life over them and bring hope to their lives. And so this fall, for example, I'm going to be on a speaking conference event schedule, tour schedule with Christine Kane and Propel Women. And I've never spoken to that audience before, so it's a whole new audience. And just looking for opportunities to spread hope in spaces that need it and spaces that we're not currently serving through our existing company.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. I told everybody at the beginning, but if someone wanted to connect with you online, what's the best way to do that?
ChristyWright.com, and that's ChristyWright.com, and that's where everything is. Really, Business Boutique, our events, our podcast, the book, everything is there. So, and then on Twitter at Christy B. Wright.
Perfect. And I will have all of that in the show notes, you guys. And of course, we are here today talking about Business Boutique. It is out now everywhere books are sold, written by Christy Wright. Absolutely love it. I pre-ordered 2 of the books, you guys, so we'll do a really fun giveaway as soon as I get those. So 2 of you will be able to get your hands on those early. But Christy, thank you so much for being here. It was truly my pleasure.
Hey, Kinsey, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to do it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.